Calandra here. Today we are going to be taking a look at 7 different Rhodes electric piano libraries. If you want to skip this intro, there are timestamps below. My own personal history with the Rhodes goes back to my teenage years, where I worked for an entire year and purchased a 73-key Mark I Rhodes with a silver-face Fender twin amplifier. I used this instrument for 3 years and beat it into the ground as I was playing 5 or 6 nights a week in clubs. A newer model Suitcase with a more powerful amplifier was released later on in the 1970s, and I replaced my Mark I with that model. After a few years of use, the Suitcase model was replaced with the 54-key version, as the actual weight of the Suitcase amp and keyboard was extremely difficult to move, even with a hand truck. After finishing undergraduate school in 1982, I started to work in New York City in the original company of The Little Shop of Horrors off-Broadway musical. I spent 5 years in that show from late 1982 until it closed in late 1987. The keyboard book there used a 73-key Mark II version of the Rhodes, along with a Korg CX3 organ and Korg Poly 6 synth. By the mid-1980s, the sound of the Rhodes fell out of favor to the sound created by the Yamaha DX7. That being said, you can't keep a great instrument down for long, and by the mid to late 1990s, the instrument started to make a comeback. At that point, you could only purchase a used version. In about 2002, I purchased a 1971 Suitcase instrument that I used for a couple of years, but when a 1972 Mark I Buzz Watson stamped model became available, I purchased it, and as you can see by the intro video, I still own it. It's an amazing sounding instrument and still is in good condition for a mechanical piano almost 50 years old. It's the era of instrument that Chick Corea's Light as a Feather and Return to Forever albums were recorded on, and those 2 albums are still some of my favorite music. For those of you who don't know who Buzz Watson was, there are a couple of links in the description box below to articles on him. Why use a sample library when I've got access to the real thing? Well, there are a few reasons. Rhodes keyboards are mechanical and need constant work to remain in good playing condition, especially an instrument between 40 and 50 years old. I've had quite a bit of work done on mine since I've purchased it. The sample library is in tune, and most of these instruments were set up and in top shape when they were sampled. Recording via MIDI means that I can go back today, tomorrow, the next day, edit my MIDI performance, and re-record things. It'll sound the same and it'll fit into the track better. Another really important feature of using sampled versions are the amount of customizations you can create with all the controls found on the GUIs of these instruments. This takes the one Rhodes sample and uses it as a basis to create many different sounding instruments and, hopefully, one that works well with the track that you were working on. Today, I've got 7 different instruments by Scarbee, Spectrasonics, Air Music Tech, and Soniccouture to go through. Each one is a different take on the Rhodes or Fender Rhodes piano. If you like this video, give a thumbs up. For more content, please subscribe, and to be notified, ring that bell. Leave any comments or questions below. What are your experiences with this instrument, and which library do you like the best? For me, each one of these is unique, and while I do have my favorite, they all have their uses. Thanks for watching, and let's get into it. The first piano we'll take a look at today is the Scarbee Classic EP-88S. This is a 1974 stage piano that Thomas Scarbee sampled and did this beautiful job programming this interface. So right here, we've got our presets, and you can just, a classic stage, the first one. Right, so that's just a very simple sound. You can go through some of these. My favorite one is Hello Butterfly. Yeah, you can hear the stereo right there. And please be listening to this with headphones, earbuds, or even on studio monitors. All right, let's take a look at some of these controls. So right here, you've got control over the vibrato, and turning it off, we hear the sound now is just dead center. Turning the vibrato on, you've got an intensity, which is how wide. So this emulates this Suitcase model, actually the late 70s Suitcase model. Mid to late 70s. And you could tempo sync it. Right, I've got it whole notes there and quarter notes. And you can bring down the intensity. And also, you can play around with the speed, even if you have it set up to tempo sync. So it's much slower now, and it's not really actually happening. So now, stereo spread. Right, so that gives it a little bit, I wonder if they're playing with the phase of that, but that makes it sound a little bit wider to me. And then you can play around with stretch tuning, and you can have the Suitcase preamp, which is what this is to emulating, or the passive tone control, which is like a stage piano. Let's turn off the vibrato for a second, and stereo spread. Now, these are sounding a little bit warm and without a lot of the bell, but you can get that with this piano. You can turn the bass down, right, just as if it was a stage piano, and then now, if we look at a different preset, let's do this. You can hear now it's much brighter. Right, playing around with the timbre. That kind of simulates how close and how far away from the tine the pickup is. Now, what's also cool is that you've got this calibration control for your keyboard action. You have all these different presets here. And if I just do this medium, and I want to reset the calibration, if I play on the keyboard, it will detect my velocity layers that my keyboard is shooting out. So I've got a CP4 here by Yamaha, and let's see how that works. And the other thing that's really great about this is that it feels really good to play it, this instrument. It responds really well. Let's go to the effects, and you've got all sorts of effects here. And I just want to show you a couple of things here. So you can set up a touch wah. Turn the compressor off if you want. And then you've got overdrive. Adding a little bite, chorus. So these are, a lot of these effects are built into Kontakt, but they've scripted with this skin here to make it very easy to access. So let's just leave the compressor on and turn the chorus off, and then you've got a rotator effect. Now, what if you want to control the speed of that rotator? So then you go over here, you click on this gear here, you open this up, and right now they've got modulation set to reverb level. And that's fine, but what if I did this? Clicked on this, rotator speed. And then the minimum I set to 0, and then the maximum I set to 100. So now, this right here is MIDI CC1. And I can control that. Let's just play through a few more presets. Balcony steel. Kind of like a Steely Dan almost. Custom tuxedo. Early 70s solo. Oh, let's try that again. Yeah, that's nice too. Misty Money. You could do some really great ambient stuff, right? Mr. Fingers. Right. This is the Scarbee Classic EP-88S, a really great instrument. Let's move on to our next contender. Our next Rhodes emulation is the Arturia Stage 73, and this is a modeled instrument, not sampled. It's an interesting take on a Rhodes. Let's dive into it. So you see this is the GUI, and this is a stage model right here. And here you've got all your presets, right? And then over here, you can select Suitcase and then notice the GUI changes. And this is interesting because it's got the more modern preamp here and the older gray grill clothed amplifier underneath. The one I owned had the black grill cloth underneath with these controls. Let's take a look at some of our presets. So electric piano. So this is, let's go. So the Latin Fusion, 1972. Let's take a listen to how this sounds. Play through a few presets. Amped Suitcase, 1973. More of the bell. Oh, wrong direction, sorry. So those are some of the presets. Let's go to advanced. And you have different models here. So let's just see what happens when we change the model. So this is classic A. And let's see. Let's turn down the intensity a little bit. Let's change our output to stereo. Good, you can hear that. Classic B. And moving ahead, high tines, which is what it originally came out at, and then the main. Very punchy. Mark V, which is a later version. Actually, the Mark V, as most of you know, was the last version that the Fender Rhodes, or the last version of Rhodes that was put out. And Chick Corea toured around with one for ages. I like this one. Modern. Interesting. Let's go back to that Mark B. And let's go to our effects and see what we can do here. So right here, you see you've got all sorts of foot pedals. So right now we've got a chorus. Let's do the cry wah. And we've got a reverb pedal. Analog delay. I see it's timed to the track. Let's do quarter note and let's do a little less wet. And I think we can darken the feedback tone. Make a little wetter. So that's like putting a low pass filter on the feedback. So you can build up a nice pedal board here, save your presets, and let's see. Oh, so you've got two amp selections here. So you've got a twin. Let's turn this on. And it's funny because I had a silver-face twin for my very first Rhodes amp back in the mid-70s. Yes, dating myself. It's a beautiful thing. Let's turn the delay off. Adding a little punch. Right, so that's the amps tremolo, in which case you turn this one off. Turn the bright switch on. And then here you've got convolution reverb, obviously. Brightness. So that's like really hard tines. It's interesting. I'm not sure I enjoy playing this one as much as I do. Then you've got all these settings here. The Scarbee. But I think in a track, you can craft this to make a really great sound that you can use. I'm not sure how authentic it sounds to a real Rhodes. But one thing I will say is that the touch sensitivity on this is really responsive. That's something to keep in mind also. Okay, and that's a look at the Arturia Stage 73. And this is the Keyscape. Rhodes classic, Keyscape by Spectrasonics. As you can see on the left-hand side of the GUI, there's a bunch of presets here. We're just going to stick with the very first program here, the Rhodes classic, and I'll play it. and then we'll look through some of the controls, and maybe we'll go through some of the other presets. So let's try it. Really pristine condition Rhodes. Has a really good sound to it. Feels nice to play. So we've got, so let's take a listen to just the direct signal. And let's hear what the mechanics sound like. Oh, interesting. You could see that it's very detailed. It's not just one or two samples. It's pretty much the entire keyboard. Whoops, let's turn that back up. Or maybe every couple of notes. It's interesting because in a recording, you'd never hear the mechanical because it would go direct, or you'd mic up the amplifier, right? But I guess this gives you the sense that you're playing a physical instrument, because if you are playing a Rhodes, you will hear those mechanical sounds. And you turn the tremolo on and turn up the depth and the speed. And this is the original Suitcase tremolo, right? It's just a volume swell. And then if I turn on the auto pan, you can hear it going back and forth between the left and right speakers. That's a bit dramatic. We can bring that down a little. Okay, so here's the release noise. You can hear that. You might want a little bit of that. Pedal noise. I'm holding the sustain pedal up and down. That you would hear that in recordings, so you might. And let's look at the velocity sensitivity. So I'll turn it completely to the left. So that's a wider range of velocity. I can hit it very soft. I'm hitting very soft. Okay, let's look at the tone. Preamp, clean, warm. Turn the bass and the treble up, presence. You can hear this mid-range scoop there, push in the mid-range there. And then bright. And bright 3. Go back to clean. Oops, sorry. Keep everything in the middle. I'm not quite sure what the denoise does. All right, let's look at the color shift here. That's cool, I like that. Tape saturation. All right, let's turn that off. And effects. So you've got different kinds of reverb. So spring. Studio. And you can make it in mono if you'd like, which would be more accurate with the spring reverb. And echo. And then a bunch of modulation effects. So these, let's listen to the Univibe. So these are all taken from Omnisphere, I believe, all these effects. So if you're familiar with Omnisphere, you know what these effects sound like. And then you've got all your settings here. You can change your velocity curve and your info. We could go through, let's do the Suitcase Lush. Let's hear what that sounds like. Gotta be careful with Spectrasonics. It can be very loud. So let me bring the output volume down. One more time. Nice. Classic amp lush chorus. So this is with, that looks like a deluxe reverb. And there's lots of presets here and you can customize yourself. So that's a look at the Rhodes Classic by Keyscape. So this is the Scarbee Mark I, which was the original Rhodes that that Thomas released, and I believe this is a 1975 stage piano. So let's just play it a little bit, and then we'll play around with the controls and see what we got. So right here, you've got controls for bass, treble. Right, brings out more of the bell sound. It's interesting. I noticed this on the EP-88 of Scarbee's, that when I play it, it feels good in my hands. You know, when I play it, it's very responsive. Like when I lay in with my fourth or fifth finger, I can bring out the melody on this particular one and the EP-88S. And that's a little bit more difficult with some of the other models. I have to really exaggerate laying into the outside part of my right hand to bring out the melodies. Anywhere, you know, it just really, the velocity curve on this is really well done. So let's take a look at instrument noise. It's subtle, it's there. You can hear some noise from the instrument, but it's not overdone. I'm not a big fan of it in any instrument, to be honest with you. I like to have it there, but not exaggerated. Let's see what kind of reverb we've got here. Sounds like a hall. Let's look at the preset. Old school. So this also is got to be at least a decade old, this sample. Nice. Delay. Use explicit time milliseconds. And then you can time it to your track. Insert effects. Interesting. Let's go back to old school and let's do an auto wah. Okay, so this is sort of the old school, I mean the newer panning. You know, the thing about the Scarbee stuff is that it sounds like I expect this instrument to sound. That pan, I had a Suitcase Rhodes. That's what it sounded like. And there's auto-wah, comp, chorus, distortion, phaser, and amp. So that's a look at the Scarbee Mark I. I'll do a little more playing with this because I like this one. This used to be my favorite until the newer one came out. Also, this comes with Complete from Native Instruments now. So if you get Complete, this comes with it. And that's the Scarbee Mark I. Our next electric piano here is by Air Instruments, and it's called Velvet. And this was only available for a long time in Pro Tools, but now you can also get it as an AU and a VST. And one thing about this is that if you look around, you can find this for $10 sometimes, $9.99 on sale. If you look at some of the plug-in aggregate sites like ADSR or Plug-in Alliance, is it? I forget which one it is. Not on the Air Instruments site, but on some of these third-party sites, you can find this for sale for literally $10. And it's a good plug-in for that value if you don't have a good Rhodes and you're on a budget. I believe that this is a combination of sampling and modeling, in that the attack is sampled and the rest of the instrument is modeled. At least that's my understanding. And one thing I do like about this is that all of the controls are right in this one page. There's no hidden menus. So let's take a look at some of the presets. So you've got Mark I, which is an earlier model, Mark II, which is a later model, Suitcase 73, A200, which is Wurlitzer, and the Hohner Pianette. So this is very versatile. It has all these different models in it. But we're going to just stick with Mark I and maybe Mark II today. So let's do the Tyne default. Yeah, that's an interesting sound that doesn't sound anything like a Rhodes. Let's go to the Mark I tremolo. There we go. That's a lot better. It's very, very early sound. Might even be like late 60s, early 70s. Okay, so what we can do here is we can have different mechanics. We can have our mechanics on. Let's turn the level of that up. Right, you can hear the plink. That's the key off. You could set that level. Condition mint. Right, bad. You can see it's way out of tune now. And then you have your memory, 3 of these, economy, medium, and extra large, and then your fine tuning. And then you could set up your velocity curve here. Right, so I'll play the same dynamic. Right, so you can see that it gets louder down here with a softer touch, and here you have to really whack it to get that bite. And then your timbre. vintage, soft. And hard. Right? Very percussive. And then you've got your effects section here. So let's add a little tube drive. And then you've got an EQ section here. Midsection. So you can see I'm crafting a better sound now, right? And then you've got distortion, 3 different types. Ring modulation. Crush, mix. Ring modulation. And that was a very often used effect on early Rhodes players. They put it through a ring modulator. George Duke, Herbie Hancock, Joe Zawinul. And then fuzz. Another wah. Modulation. Chorus. Turn the mix up. Cabinet, reverb. I'm just, you know, these are all ambience, room, spring, delay, turn the mix up, stereo, turn the effects off, and let's turn the depth up for that tremolo. All right, let's look at some of the Mark II presets, just a couple. Let's do Dyno, hear what that sounds like. The Dyno My Piano was an additional preamp, a powered preamp, active preamp added to the Rhodes that added a lot of bell sound to the instrument. Well, that doesn't really sound like a Dyno My Piano. I never really liked the sound of the Dyno My Pianos. Feedback chorus. Okay, that's the Velvet. Not my favorite, but for $10, there's, you know, if you find it on sale, I think it's a good value because you can do all sorts of programming with it to come up with additional sounds, and plus it has these other models here that you might find interesting. Let's take a listen to the Suitcase actually before we go off. Let's try Foster Child. I guess that's supposed to be like David Foster. Yeah, I think this VSTI is probably 10 years old, maybe a little longer than that. Okay, Air Instruments Velvet. Let's move on to our next one. And here we have the Keyscape Rhodes LA Custom Suitcase. This feels like the most perfectly worked on Rhodes that you'd ever play. Interesting, right? Okay, let's lay into this a little bit. This has all the same features and controls as the classic Rhodes, so I won't be going through those. I think what I'll do is just play through a bunch of the presets with this one. Custom Chorus. Funky comp. Nice. Stereo phaser. Beautiful. Custom Suitcase. Custom Univibe. Let's see. Bright 80s. Let's see what that sounds like. I see. This is like the Dynamite. Custom Suitcase 80s. You can hear a little bit of the noise there when I was holding on the sustain pedal. Old sampler. Let's try Suitcase Warm. And that's the Keyscape Rhodes LA Custom. The Soniccouture has an interesting take on the Rhodes. This is their EP-73 Deconstructed. Before I talk a little bit more about it, let me just play a little bit of the sound. So the EP-73 Deconstructed has a pure Rhodes sample, but they also did some other things with the instrument. They bowed the tines, hit it with mallets, they plucked it, and then they did some sound effects. Let's just go through the first one, and then we'll look at the other libraries found within this package. Right here is our interface, and as you can see, we've got 3 separate types of recording the Rhodes. So the first one that you just heard is the line out. And the GUI has obviously the Rhodes control stylings. We could turn that off. And then the microphone. So obviously that's a microphone above the harp. If any of you have ever owned a Rhodes and taken the top off and not had it plugged into an amplifier, that sound is very familiar to you. And then a contact mic. Right? Again, inside the instrument. And then I had this activated before, but you can turn on the edit button and then you've got some controls here. So let's go back to the line out and we can add some saturation. Fatten the sound up a little bit. High pass filter. We can blend these in to come up with interesting hybrid sounds. Well, that would be a bit too much of the microphone, but maybe a little bit of that plunk would be okay. I see, it only goes down to the lowest E of the Rhodes. They haven't stretched the tuning down. Or you can add a little bit of the contact mic as well. Then down here you've got a tremolo. Now, the tremolo speed is right here. And this is more like an early Rhodes Suitcase tremolo, in that it's not stereo. It's not a ping pong where the sound is going from the left speaker to the right, to the left, to the right. This is just a volume right in the middle of the stereo field. And this is the intensity. So we can, a little sounds good. And then your filter, right? Low pass. You could turn up some resonance. Frequency envelope generator, velocity. So I'm hitting it as hard as I can, right? And it's soft. So that's interesting. And then your envelope. Oh, I see. You can turn that on there. And then you've got some really sound designy things that you can do. And you can do some key off. Let's get a little more volume. Yeah, that's a bit drastic. Here you've got some options for your velocity setup and RAM management, right? So you can have just one layer of the microphone or 3 layers, and the same with the contact mic and the line out, and you could also unload them. Stuff for pedal resonance and noise and regular noise. And let's hear what the regular noise sounds like. Oh, I see. Electronic noise. Like 60 cycle hum. Yeah, I'm good without that. And then effects. So we've got, these all look to be some of the convolution reverbs. Okay, let's go back to the instrument itself, and let's just get this. Oh, okay. Now let's go back here to the effects, and let's see what this auto pan does. Okay, so this gives you more of the modern panning. Okay, so that's a brief overview of that. Let's take a look at some of these other programs. So this is bowed. So I guess that they're using a violin bow over the tines. Turn down the noise of the bow. Interesting. And this is with mallets. Now, I'm not sure if this is hard or soft mallets. So this is obviously where the mallets are hitting. So this seems to be an aggregate mix of the 3 spots. Interesting. Almost like a music box. Let's listen to the individual. Interesting. That almost sounds more like FM in a certain way. Tone bar. Now the tine is it's like the string of the Rhodes, and it's got a little spring on it that you adjust for the tuning. The tone bar is the gold or brass colored bar that's above the tine. Not much pitch there. There is pitch, but not a lot. And again, you've got the same controls as on the original. All right, now let's look at the plucked. It's interesting. This sounds like a late 70s, like that band Styx used to use on some of their tunes, or 10cc. Oh, right. Because this is plucked, they're just letting the sound ring off. So you have to be careful. Let's see. And this is SFX. Let's hear what this sounds like. Unmute this, that'd be good. I see, so each key is a different... I guess cartoon would be useful. Now, as far as the original sound goes, let's turn some of these things off. You know, it's a beautifully sampled instrument, and the way they've got it set up is that you can hear the bell. Right, and that's a little bit different than with the Scarbee, where the pure sound was very rich and filled with mid-range and low-end information and not as much bell. You had to use the EQ to bring that out. And that's a look at the Soniccouture EP-73. That brings us to the end of this video. Leave any comments or questions below. Please like, subscribe, ring that bell. Thanks so much for watching. I've been Pete Calandra, and I'll catch you on the next one.